Welcome back to the Charlie Cook Cricket Podcast. Now, Test match cricket is finally back in England. We've had to wait, what's it been now, 7-8 months now that the 100 takes up most of the summer. And it was a cracking day for England. 498 for three centurions on day one. Zach Crawley, Ben Duckett and Ollie Pope. I'm joined with Billy today. Billy, we are going to go through all of what happened on day one in England versus Zimbabwe. Have Zach Crawley and Ollie Pope just booked themselves onto a flight to Australia in 6 months' time?
Yeah, I think it would be very harsh to drop them after today's performances, after all the faith they've been given over the last 4 or 5 years. It was interesting to see how differently they went about it as well. Obviously, Zach Crawley kind of eased himself into the innings, went at a strike rate at 75, which in this baseball team is quite slow, really. But Ollie Pope, on the other hand, came out the blocks flying and kind of carried that all the way through the innings. We know Pope can be frenetic at times and he can look a little bit rushed, but today it was all the positive signs of that. He was active, he was always looking to score, and that's probably not something that we've seen from Pope for probably since the first test in India last year.
Yeah, I was really impressed with Pope. It's kind of that thing with him that if he can make it through those first 30 balls, then you're in for a good time. But he started so quickly, you're thinking, well, after 30 balls, you might be on 60. He's batting this quickly. It was almost a 200 strike rate for the first kind of 15 balls that he faced. And just seemed to really go out there and attack. Almost a little bit like, okay, I've heard Stokes' comment yesterday. Bethel's going to come back into the side for India. My name is top of the list for that chopping block for batting number 3. How Bethel comes in now, I'm not 100% sure. If Stokes was 100% in saying that he wants Bethel to come back into the side. For me, the obvious choice is not to play Bashir and just make that batting lineup longer. Whether you put Bethel in at 6 or you put Pope in at 6 and then just move everyone down one, however you want to do it, that would make sense to me. I thought Zach Crawley was really sensible. There's something about this setup that I think just makes everyone feel really comfortable. So even if you do fail, you know that there's kind of a warm arm, there's an arm around your shoulder when you go in. And I think people just thrive in it. And that's what makes Zach Crawley go from his highest score being 1 in a first inning so far in first-class cricket to now 124.
Yeah, I think he looked really comfortable outside his off stump as well, which, again, it's been a weakness of Crawley for so long. But early on in the game, you had Muzra Barney, who I thought looked pretty good with the new ball, albeit not overly threatening. But Crawley was happy to let things go. He knew when to block, and it looked a much more assured performance from him that we've seen. Obviously, he looked a lot better before the broken finger. Started last summer with a nice 70 against West Indies, and it's not worked out for him from then. But hopefully, back with a bit of rhythm. Big score, so you can forget about the poor start the year he's had with Kent and just look forward now and hopefully, onto the India series.
Yeah, I mean, the other centurion that no one was worried about, Ben Duckett, I genuinely think he's the best opener in Test cricket at the moment. I can't think... Jaiswal's probably the only one that's up there with him, but just the way that Duckett scores his runs, I'd pick Duckett over Jaiswal at this point. And I think he had that problem of converting those kind of 60, 70, 80 scores into hundreds. Just those last few test matches, he seems to be doing it a little bit more. I know this is Zimbabwe. You have to take it with a bit of pinch of salt. The pitch was very flat, but I just think he's such a talent. And what a find that he's been of picking him up through county cricket when it wasn't the most obvious option.
Yeah, I mean, he went to Pakistan in 2022 and the whole focus was on how well he plays spin. I remember in an interview in the last tour of Pakistan, he was very open about his conversion rate, saying that he knows it's not as good as it should be. I thought you could tell that today he had a big flash. He was on 97, I believe, and nearly nicked off. And you could kind of see talking to himself, pulled himself back in, then the bowled the same ball, and he left it alone next time. Didn't try anything too expansive. Maybe that's something we've seen in the past. The most obvious one is at Lords in the Ashes, when he should have got the ton and hooked, but he's probably England's best all-format batsman behind Joe Root at the moment, you'd say?
Yeah, I mean, I'd have him as number one. I I would really have him as number one. I think he's a better T20 player than Joe Root, which probably
Yeah, that's fair.
just tips it over the edge for him. And just he has gone from in 2 years going from not being in a side whatsoever to now being first name on the team sheet in all three formats. I think he's been incredible. Um, you can tell that he really likes being around this group, and this group likes him being around. And that partnership, it shows today when you have a less experienced bowling lineup like Zimbabwe's is, how difficult it is to bowl to Crawley and Duckett, with one being 6'5", the other one being 5'5", one being right-handed, one being left-handed. It just works so well with Crawley wanting to come on the front foot, Duckett wanting to play off the back foot. It's just two completely different lines and lengths that they had to get, and that was one of the problems I think Zimbabwe had today, was just trying to find that line of length and a bit of consistency. I was impressed by Raza, but I expected. I've seen him so much in franchise cricket. I've seen him play for Zimbabwe for years now. Muzarabani, we've obviously seen in some county cricket when he was at Northants for a bit. I think he's great. I think he's a real talent. Obviously, 6'8". I mean, the rest of it was tough. It was a real tough watch for them today.
Yeah, it was. I thought they started relatively okay with the new ball. Obviously, the first over from ENGvsZIM was a little bit scattergun, but after that, both himself and Muzarabani tightened it up a little bit. And I was thinking that we might have a competitive morning on, but then the first bowling change kind of summed up the whole day when Tanaka Chavanga came on. And he bowled one ball to Zach Crawley that nipped back off a length and went through the gate, nearly hit the off stump. But then there was one down the leg side, there was one high above him, one down where the keeper was having to dive past first slip to collect it. And there was just no rhythm with his line, with his length. And then Sikandar Raza, like you say, I was impressed with him. He kind of tightened it up. There was a spell just after lunch where Raza was bowling from one end and Nyuchi was bowling from the other. And that was probably Zimbabwe's best spell of the game, I'd say. But even then, Duckett was tucking it off his leg for a single. Crawley was working it through mid-wicket, trying to get off strike. And they never really got that hold on the game.
Yeah, and I think that's the problem with playing against this England team, is that it's a case of, okay, if you bring the field in, they're going to hit boundaries against you, and then all of a sudden you're going at 5, 6 and over, and the game's getting away from you. Even if you can pick up 1 or 2 wickets, they're scoring at 5, 6 and over. So you're 120 for 2 when before you'd usually be 60 for 2, and it looks a lot better. Or you go for the way that they did today, and you put 2 players on the boundary, then they're just going to knock around singles, and you can't bowl more than 2, 3 balls in a row at one batsman. No one ever gets bogged down, and I think it's something that England do incredibly well, and I hope that they do it better going forward, because I do think that is a way that they can beat India, and then obviously the big one in Australia in 6 months' time. That's how you're going to do it, and it's not by going out and hitting sixes. It's not by blocking and going at 2.5 and over. It's somewhere in the middle and just keeping that strike rate ticking over. It's why Joe Root's been so good for so many years now.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, today against the spin, there were so many singles that got knocked about. Zimbabwe couldn't get a hold of it. It ended up with Zimbabwe setting fields that were kind of neither here nor there. They were just putting maybe a 5-4 field on the onside, hoping to have protection everywhere, which is kind of England's dream, really, because then they can just drop it in. Then even when the ball's a little bit short, you see Ollie Pope crouching down to the point where his head's almost below the bails and flicking it over the slips. And at that point, being an opposition captain must be I'd rather be on the sofa watching it than being the captain of the opposition, we'll put it that way.
Yeah, it was definitely a tough day in the office for Zimbabwe. In terms of what England do next, were you happy that they didn't declare before the end of play?
Yeah, I was. Maybe I've been changed in my opinion from Edgbaston a couple of years ago, but I think with the way, especially with it being a 4-day test, you've got almost 500 on the board already. you can look to bat until tea tomorrow night if you want to, and you could. Feels weird to say that you could have 800, 850 on the board, and then, you know, depending on the state of the game, depending on who's at the crease, obviously, you know, call them in then, and then maybe have the evening session bowling at Zimbabwe. But I don't think England will declare. I think the time at the crease for Brook will be valuable coming into the summer, especially with the ODIs coming up next week. Stokes, he'll want to get time in, coming back from recovering from surgery. So I think just getting minutes into the legs, time at the crease is the most important thing at the moment.
Yeah, it's a case of, are you looking at this as a serious test, or are you looking at this as a warm up? Because there's a world where they can just keep batting and score 1,000, and just say, well, even if we draw it, we're having a kind of a lifelike net, and runs and time at the crease is more important because the next 10 test matches are more important than this one. I'd imagine, knowing them, they'll probably go for the win. I'd imagine they bat for another hour tomorrow, give it a whack. Stokes comes out, tries to score the fastest 50, and then declare on 600. I mean, even if they declare on 600, I'd be surprised if Zimbabwe make England bat again. Whether England enforce the follow-on and rest and different things like that, you've got to think about. I was relatively happy they didn't declare. I think the difference. See, the one stance I always have on that Edgbaston declaration is I am one person, I think, in the whole world that completely understood why they did it, and was actually quite happy that they did it. I remember tweeting out at the time, I was like, Stokes should declare before the end of play on day one. And the difference to that is, obviously, we were 8 down in that situation. So, okay, I know Joe Root was at the crease, but what, you get 20, 30 more runs. If Broad takes Warner at the end of play, then all of a sudden that's a different story. If England declare on 450 and pick up 1 or 2 Zimbabwe wickets, it's not going to make that much of a difference to the game. I know that there's some weather around on Saturday, but I think it's going to be fine anyway. It looks like the weather forecast is getting a little bit better. I was just really impressed with England today. I just thought they went about it sensibly. Okay, there was points where we scored quickly, but it just felt like we were hitting the bad balls and not just trying to attack everything. We were actually showing some respect to some of the Zimbabwe bowling when it was on the right line and length.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we went at 5.6 and over, and there were definitely points in the day where it didn't feel like that. Like we've already touched on, the knocking about singles. But there was a point where they'd just taken the new ball, and Musrabani bowled a good length ball to Joe Root, just led back, angled his bat down the third man, let it run off the face of his bat, and it went for 4. And that's England when they're at their best, just manipulating the field. It's Joe Root when he's at his best. And then 9 balls after they'd taken the new ball, there was no slip cordon. So that's England at their best. Ben Stokes said in the week he wanted to dominate teams, and I don't think it gets much more dominant than today.
No, it really was. The problem is at what point do you feel sorry for Zimbabwe? Because it's kind of, they never ever had any expectations of winning this game. I'd imagine their first test in England in 22 years. Now, they are playing a lot of Test cricket this year. This is the one thing that everyone's realised, that, hold on, Zimbabwe are playing 11 Tests this year. I was like, well, yeah, we've had the schedule out for a while. You could have just looked ahead. I mean, you obviously, everyone else wasn't in the trenches watching Zimbabwe Bangladesh a couple of weeks ago. I was, because I watch every cricket game there is. I think it's tough for them. I think it's a bit of exposure. There's going to be players in that lineup that are going to have opportunities that they wouldn't necessarily get because they're on prime time in a big 3 country. Musrabani, for instance, he's going to go off to RCB in the IPL. Now, that obviously wasn't on the back of this test, but I think there's going to be more stories like that. They're obviously getting a touring fee for coming over, which is something that no one's really done in the past. So that's nice to see. So it's worth Zimbabwe coming over. The problem is that you just don't have competitive cricket. very similar to what the Ireland test was before the Ashes a couple of summers ago. England feel very set on having 6 tests in a summer now. If you're playing a 5-match test series, then you need that kind of one-off spare to sell a few tickets. I did think that the ground looked a bit empty today, though.
Yeah, I did think that when the teams are coming out, there was a few stands that looked completely closed off. Obviously, it's a bit of a shame to see that, because normally in England we pack out every day. But yeah, I don't think Zimbabwe starting on a Thursday for a 4-day test was always going to be the big seller. But it is encouraging to have them over it. Maybe if it was a 2-match test series and the next, say we played at Headingley and the pitch had a little bit more in it, maybe we'd be talking about Zimbabwe taking a few more wickets early on in the day. But it's definitely encouraging to see. I did start to feel sorry for them a little bit, actually. It's about 70 overs in, and the commentators started talking about how they should just enjoy the experience. And it's like, well, it's a bit hard when Ollie Pope's hitting you for 6 over deep square.
The Make-A-Wish team that we've turned them into. I mean, it's not great, is it? I mean, in terms of the pitch, I thought the pitches. This is the problem that I have with England pitches at the moment. They just seem to be a bit dull. They don't seem to be as exciting as they once were.
Yeah, there was next to nothing on offer, really. I'm hoping that when England get the ball in hands and maybe Atkinson and Tong can do something, they'll have a little bit more pace than what the Zimbabwe seamers have had so far. But yeah, the pitch looked completely lifeless for the most of it.
And I can't wait to watch Bashir not be able to spin the ball. That will be good fun to watch. Sam Cook does average 12.7 or something like that at Trent Bridge in the county championship, so maybe that's going to be something to look forward to. I was almost a little bit disappointed that we didn't bowl first, because that's where all the kind of new shiny stuff is. Like, so I want to watch Sam Cook. I want to watch Josh Chung again bowl, because I haven't seen him in an England shirt in 2 years. So I was like, oh, okay. Here comes Crawley and Duckett to whack around
as well.
Yeah, Crawley and Duckett to whack around a pretty poor attack on a flat pitch. I've seen this before. it happens quite often. In terms of what's going to happen tomorrow, are we expecting, I presume, England declaration. Do England bowl out Zimbabwe tomorrow?
I mean, it's not out of the question, is it? You look back to how they dismantled the West Indies at Lords last year, but I think Zimbabwe have got some decent batsmen in that top 6, and I'd expect them to maybe not reach the levels that England have, per se, but I think they'll put up a fight. I think it'll be harder than people think to dislodge some of the men at the top, but like we say, if Atkinson, Tong, Cook can get on a roll, then England could bowl them out by the end of the day, but I won't put my money on it.
Yeah, I can see a collapse in there. I can really see it. I think the occasion might just be too big. I mean, the reason that you bowl first in a game is that you don't lose it in the first out. You go in and you bat first and you're 50 for 5, and then the game's gone, and you bowl first because you don't want to lose on the first day. Well, they've lost on the first day. It's done. Okay, they scored 500 against you. You can't come back from it. The game is done. It's either going to be a draw because it rains too much, or England are going to win. That's your 2 options at the moment. So Zimbabwe are going to be pretty dead in the water. But I'm excited to watch day 2. Hopefully we do get to see all those new shiny bowlers that we haven't seen for a bit. Billy, thank you very much for joining me. If you do want to check him out, his links will be down in the description and the show notes. So go drop him a follow. And then we will be back tomorrow to break down day 2 of England versus Zimbabwe. Who knows what could happen today? Maybe England are still batting tomorrow. Who knows? But remember to like, remember to subscribe, follow, whatever you do on all of your podcast providers, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Cheers.